Okay, so this is going to be an example of working with your name and email address program, um, where you need to pickle a dictionary of a name and address where the name is the key of where the address is going in the dictionary. So we're going to save the dictionary and load the dictionary. And one thing that we want is probably a good example of taking and pickling a dictionary in Python. And that would be something that we would want to get working before we kind of get started on anything else, is just get code that does that. And something simple without functions so that we're not getting too much going along. And finding an example and then making it work at a lower level will help us get beyond any issues when we get to file loading and saving. So there's a couple examples out here that I've found that I think will be good to give a shot. Now, one thing you got to be really careful about when you copy and paste code from the web. Here's the issue: is sometimes you're not getting the characters that you actually expect, and then you paste it into Visual Studio Code or your editor, and characters that are there that you can't, they're Unicode characters for the web that are there, but your editor won't see them. So it's really kind of you want to be careful with copying and pasting from things. One thing I always like to do is I like to just throw it up in Notepad, and Notepad will strip it of those special characters. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this list and we're going to print our pickled dictionary, and at key hello is the value stored world. What we're going to have is key name, the person's name, value, the email address. So I want to just get this working first, and then we can start kind of fleshing it out and working with it. One thing that we're going to have to do, though, is for this, our list is going to need to be a global variable. We're going to write functions to work with the list, and then that way we won't have to worry about the pass by value issues with arguments. We could also always use it as a return value. Maybe we'll try that first and see if we can't make it more of a return, and that way we won't have to use a global variable. But that's going to be something that we'll also kind of piecemeal as we go through on this. But the goal is to just get something working first, which is going to be this example. And once we have that in with all the right text and whatnot, so I've got a Python file here, Visual Studio Code, that we're going to use. And I want to make sure that I get rid of as much white space as possible, especially initially from downloading, and make sure that all my tabs are good. When you use the with open, you got to tab that in because it's actually creates a new scope, if you can see the colons here. So what we want is we just want this mechanism to behave appropriately. Let's go with emails.dat for a file. Now the problem is here is we want to write it first before we try to open it. And that means when you're first starting your program, you don't want to start loading automatically a file that doesn't exist yet. So you got to actually put things into your dictionary and then save it. So the last step you'll do is write your code so it loads the file that you've built. Or you can check to see if the file exists, and if it doesn't, then go ahead and do a write binary of nothing. Or, there's a lot of things you can do, but we're going to just assume that the file exists. for what we're doing. Now what we want is, let's just see if this will work and print our list back to us. And if it does, then we can go on to the next step of what we'll do by choosing probably a menu. We'll do some kind of menu option. So there we go. We got hello world. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's rename this. Instead of A, let's use some decent naming, and we'll call this emails. LST list email list. So that's a good one. LST for it's a list, and it's a list of emails. And what we're going to do is, let's just go ahead and pre-populate this array with a John Doe. And we can do a space in it. I think so. I think we're fine, because the whole name can be the key, whatever the user types in for their name. So that's one's okay. And then where we're going to have it, John Doe, we're going to have J Doe at doe.com. So that is just something to get us started. We can add some more in there, and we can actually also make that an empty list if we wish. So now I'm going to have to go in here for my name and replace it for what the pickle is going to dump. So the pickle, when we import pickle, that's just a bit of code that we can output information as binary and serialization. It's pretty much set up for you just to import it and use it. And when we dump it, we want to dump it for, we want to write it, and that's going to be output as binary to the file that we have here as the handle, essentially. That's the file pointer here. Now your book probably has a different way of doing this, which is fine. But let's go ahead and see if this runs. And from there, okay, so it looks like we are printing our list. So let's go ahead and look at the assignment, and we will get back into the next step. We've got a working dictionary saving mechanism. So now that takes us into a menu and the add function, and then some of the other functions. What I'm going to do is we're going to do the add together, and the way we can write this program is that we will read from the file everything into the dictionary. Basically, we're reading from the file into RAM. That's what this does right here. It loads it into this value called B. We're going to actually call that first email, or list email, and then that's what we're going to print. And the menu for working with the add new and email addresses will update the RAM, and when we load and save, we just overwrite the whole file with everything in the list. Or we load in everything in the file into the list. So that means that if all we're doing is kind of using the file as a shadow of what's in RAM, the RAM being this list email, that means that all our menu options can do all the editing to just the RAM, and all we have to do is call a function to save it, to save it whenever we change the RAM. So when we change the RAM, we're going to want to save the file and just overwrite everything in the dictionary to the file. And then when we load it, we load up all the information from the file into the dictionary. And so therefore, if we only change the RAM and always output and overwrite the whole file, um, we only have to deal with the RAM and a save and a load function. Uh, so we change the data inside the list, then save the whole list to the file. Read in the whole list into RAM, manipulate the RAM with the menu functions, and then just overwrite the whole file itself. And this is a pretty common way of doing things if we're keeping track of a list. So we want to start with probably a function called save and load. And we may want to pass this function our list to save and load, and then get a return from it. Now, since we're doing a global variable here, we can pass the information, which is the proper way of doing it, and return the information, or we can just run the save and load that accesses the global variable. Now, in this case, this list email, it's okay to use at file scope and then just do your functions. If you don't like that, then sure enough, put it in through the arguments. We're going to go ahead and for practice, we're going to do it with arguments. So what we're going to do is I'm going to define a save function. And that function is going to take the list that's passed, the list passed, the list that's passed. Now, I'm also going to define a load function. Now, this one is going to return the loaded list. And here's the thing is, we don't want to continue on with this until we've tested it. So you don't want to, start writing a whole bunch of code that doesn't work. So you want to test this. Okay, so we got our save and our load. What I want now is I want to see that list email is loading. But I want to do this a little bit differently when I'm testing it now, because I'm trying to take this out of the global scope, and I want to create my own scope that it kind of is the program, or like the main. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function called main that's going to then hold our list and then run all these functions. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to define a main. Now the main is going to be at file scope. Same with all these other functions. And the main is going to call or create this list email. And this is no longer going to be at file scope. That's because it's unsafe, and we're going to put it at main scope. And everything that our program is going to do is going to be in that main. So it's going to do everything. And everything that main is going to do is going to be basically working with this list. And what I want to do is I want to call the list immediately, or call the main immediately. So I can start my testing, because now I am using these functions. So when I want to save, I'm going to say save the email list. Then I want to load. But the load, remember, is a value returning function. The load is returning the list after it's been loaded up. And we will now test this. I believe, since we've already ran this, we should have our load our saved one there, and we can just load it. So our saved file should be in our working folder. And our working folder, remember, the file needs to be in the same folder if you want to tell it that the file goes nowhere. You don't want to put C : / whatever. That's not the way that you program with files. You don't want to do that. That's wrong. You do an implicit file direction, meaning you tell it to open up a file, but you don't tell it where. And so it knows to go to the only directory it knows exists, which is where your Pi file is actually located. And so in that, I've got a folder that I put this in, and it's called PyTest. And then you see here's our emails.dat file generated, and emails.py. That's the one I'm working on. So you see that emails.dat is in with it. Make sure you do your view file name extensions. Seriously. And you're naming things. Don't use spaces. Don't use special characters like the ampersand or whatnot for names of anything. And try to get in the habit of proper naming conventions. You're a developer now. You should not be putting spaces in any names. Okay, so I think we're ready to test this. We need to create the list, and we're going to just go ahead and make it empty. And we don't need to save, we just want to load, because it's already there. We saved it, we created the file in our test earlier. So now I just want to load the list, the email list, and then I want to print it. Okay. Run. I think we can run without debugging. Okay, so hey, that's working. We got our output. So it loaded the information and it returned the list that we wanted to do. So you see, I'm not using any global variable here. I'm using the functions. I'm sending it the list I wanted to save. When I load it, I'm returning the list that I wanted to load. So the save and load is working. We've got it good. We've tested it. We know it's good. So now all we need to do is add the functions that are going to manipulate the memory, the RAM, the list for the loading and saving. And the first thing we want to do is add maybe something to print a menu. And that is going to be, do you notice that I'm putting all my functions above main? By the way, guys, this is top-down program. This is the way you do things. Do not put functions below where you call them. Functions always go above where you call them. They need to be defined first before you use them. Now, Python actually does 2 passes through the interpretation so that it actually can do that. You can get away with putting functions below, but it's just not good practice. So here we're going to ask for a choice, and we're going to print the menu until the choice is a specific value. Then we're going to take that and allow the user to add records, remove records. So here what we're going to do is I'm going to print, and I'm going to say push 1 to add record. Now what we want is we're going to actually end up putting this in a loop to read. So what we want to do is we want a local variable here, and I'm going to put it as char equals, let's just do an empty char. No, you know what? Let's do integers. Integers will be better and easier. So let's do ch equals 0. So 0 is our default. When we get information, we're going to do an integer input. We're going to say ch is equal to integer input, and then we're going to say here, what is it that we're reading? Well, we're inputting a number. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're just going to say choice, and they're going to enter in I'm going to put a \n here, so we got a new line character. And then what they're going to do is with that choice, they're going to enter an integer, and they're going to push number 1. And what we'll do is we'll do a print. You know what? Let's start this at -1, and let's have 0 be our exit. And then the user is going to enter that. And once they enter in CH, we're going to return that value back to our main, because our main is going to make the decision on whether to continue looping for the menu. So we're going to actually have a loop in here that deals with the menu and calling the appropriate functions based on our menu. So what I want to do here is I want to have a while, and what this while will do is it's going to call the menu function. And, ooh, yeah, because I'm actually doing a return true or false here. That's not going to work. While the call of menu does not equal, and the return is going to be 0. So we're going to continue to print the menu until the return is 0. And those are integers, so we're not doing that. That's an integer input. While the return value of menu does not equal to 0. And when the 0 comes in, that's when we no longer loop and print the menu anymore. So the menu, this call of the function is going to print the menu for us. And then we're going to have a series of if statements. If, well, it looks like we need to actually, while the menu, if we need a variable that actually calls on the menu initially. This is where do while might actually be helpful, but there's probably another way of doing it. Let's see, while menu does not equal to 0, if I want the choice. So let's go ahead and just do it that way. We're going to do a variable here. We're going to call it ch equals -1. And that's going to be our choice when we call menu. While ch does not equal to 0. And the first thing we do in our loop is call our menu and allow ch equal to. By the way, this is a different ch than the ch up here. This ch is only accessible up here. This is a ch that is totally different than this ch. But you know what? That's really not. Let's go ahead and call that choice. Let's be a little bit more specific. So we're going to do choice. Better naming conventions. Okay. Okay, we got our choice equals menu. Now we're going to do an if statement. If choice equals 1. Then we're going to call the add function. Else we don't have to do anything, because we'll hit choice of 0 and the while loop will come out. Otherwise, if it's the choice is 1, it'll add. So let's just throw this add function in for now, just so that code will work, because this is going to be the function that we use to add to the list. And I'm just going to throw it up here. It's just not going to do anything other than return 0, just for now. Because what I want to do is I want to test this menu. So I'm going to go ahead and run, start debug. And let's see if this menu is going to work for us. And then we'll come back in and get the ad going. But it looks like Visual Studio's Visual Code is being a little on the stinky side. Okay. What are you doing? What are you doing, dude? Very confused. This my hard drive is on overdrive too. Okay, well, we got our save, we got our menu, we got our choice. Okay, we got our breakpoint there. Somehow I just set the breakpoint and all of a sudden it decided to wake up and stop our execution at the breakpoint. So while choice is not equal to 0, oh, I see an error right now. Look at this one. I'm calling menu without the parentheses. Okay, so let's then hit stop. Okay. Run without debugging. I think we're good enough for that. Okay, so here is our print. It says add record, exit. Oh, it looks like our print is already doing \n, but I think what I would like to do is let's prefix it with a \n, just to get a couple spaces in there, and then run without debugging. Okay, we're going to do 0 and our program should quit. Okay, because it'll come back and it'll say, hey, I'm done. Yep, and it's done. So let's look at that. Set a breakpoint. Let's run this. Start debugging. Okay, choice starts out as -1, so it's not 0. I do step over. Then I say choice is equal to menu. Menu's going to run. Let's do a step into. We set the choice inside of here, just the ch, just inside of this function. We output the menu. Then we get the choice from the user and assign it to ch. The function returns the choice. And it looks like our runtime should be down here now, but it looks like it got confused. For some reason, it did not like that. Okay, let's test to see if it calls the add function. What we want is we want to just print in add. We know choice of 0 works. Let's see that choice of 1 works now. And I'm going to run without debugging. Okay, so 1. In add. There it is right there. So our menu is working. And then I hit 1 again and it runs the in add again. Hit 1 again and it's not until I hit 0 that it comes out. So this function is working, but here's what add needs. Add needs a few things. It needs the list that you're saving it to. And what we can do is we can take and we can send it a list and return the new list that has been added to it. So the add function, unless we want to make our list global, will need an email list. And you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You can call it just LST, past list. Well, let's call it list P, like we're doing for the other one, for past list. And what we're going to want to do is here we want to just go ahead and add to the list email, but we're doing it with the list P that we're returning. And this add function, we need to return the new list that we've just added to. Okay, and then that is going to be assigned down here to the local list email that's inside of our main. And it's going to take the list email also as a argument. So we send it the list and we get a list back in return. That's just the list that's added to. But what else does add need? Wouldn't it need maybe a name and an email to add? I think so. So let's go ahead and name, email. Let's add that in there. And then what we can do is we can say, hey, let's have a name. Let's call it n equals, and it's going to be just regular input because it's a name. Enter name. And then we're going to have as another input email. And that name and email is going to get passed to the add function. And the add function is going to change the list and return the new list. Well, how is it going to change the list? Well, it's going to add the name value pair that we have. Then once it's added that name value pair to the dictionary, it returns the new list. So now when I do a list email is equal to add this name, this email to that list, I'm going to return the new list back to the list email that we're using in main. And I should be able to then add another choice here to the menu for saving and loading. But we can actually, when the program starts, since we actually have a file now, we can load the list right off the bat because we actually have it working now. And what I want to do now is when I manipulate the RAM and I change the list, I want to go ahead and save the list. So you see right here, I've returned the added email for the list. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add the function that saves the list. And we're going to call on that and send it the list that we want it to save. And so it'll always be updated. So you change the RAM and then just overwrite the whole file. Change the RAM, overwrite the whole file. And that's kind of the direction that we're going to go with this particular program. And you'll do the same thing with like the change record. Just find the record in your list, change the list, overwrite the whole file. So let's go ahead and test this add function and see if it's actually saving. But one thing we want is let's just add a menu option to print. So we're going to add a menu option to print the list. And then we'll say is if it's equal to 9. And we're going to just go ahead and just print the whole list. Okay. And let's add that choice up in our menu. Just to print the list for choice 9. And if we got choice 9, then we print. So now we've got a mechanism. We got mechanisms to save and load. And you see how I just started with just a very simple test to make sure that it's working, that I have something that actually does something. Depending on whatever method you use out there or from your book for pickling your dictionary. I put it in a menu, and now I've got an add function that I can work with. And main does all my work. Main does all our main work. The functions are just background functions that take arguments, and main will do the rest. So what we want to do now is we want to test that add function, add a few things to the list and print it, but then shut the whole thing down and run it back up, and we should be able to print the list from what I've previously entered from my last execution. So here we're going to do is we've got in our choice, this is actually up here. So we got add a record. So I'm going to go ahead and do 1. Okay. And we got a problem. List email is not defined. And that is happening in line 5 of the save. So let's go look at line 5 of the save. And, oh, yeah. See what happened? And we tested it. That's supposed to be LSTP. Okay. And let's call this one LSTP2 so it's not, so we're not having problems. Okay, so because I'm sending it the list to save, and it looks like we weren't we didn't fully port it all the way to using the function. All right, let's try again. Run without debugging. Okay. Pickle.load is having a problem. Well, this is pretty much normal because we're not for sure that we actually have a good file saved in there. And now we're starting to see some problems. We got things just snowballed on us, and we tested things out, and now we got to kind of figure out exactly what's going on and what the issue is here. So we can do that in the debugger, but I'm kind of thinking that let's go ahead and let's make sure that we have a decent list before we try to load. And when I load here, I want to make sure that I'm loading. Okay, so I'm returning exactly what I'm loading. Okay, now we have something we can use. We save list email after we've added to it. You can ignore those warnings. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do add. It's there. I'm going to do add. John Doe at doe.com. Okay, and we're still having some problems. Where is that one having a problem? And it looks like lines 36, save list email. Why is it's saying it's not defined? List email is defined right there. And I believe because it's probably reading it as not filled up. So we need to see what's going on with this guy right here and why that's not working. So I'm going to go ahead and go to run without debugging. Okay. No, I want to run with debugging, excuse me. Start debugging. Okay. Add a record. And it should have gotten us stopped There we go. Okay, so our list, we have nothing. It looks like our ad. I'm not thinking. Yeah, our ad. We need to send it to the list. We're sending in the name and a bunch of junk. So I'm going to step into and see what's going on with our ad. Okay, so we see a LSTP. LSTP length is 0 because we just started this. So I'm going to do a step over. Okay, now LSTP, you see how it has those values in it, and it actually has a value. So now I'm going to go ahead and say step over, and I want to check to make sure LST email, you see, okay, so LST email is good. So now we go to the save function, and let's see, list email has got the information we want for what we added. So now we're going to do a step into to see why the save isn't working. And it looks like it just did not like me. Oh, duh. See, that's why debugging is so nice. It's because it really narrows you in on what the problem is. It's just simple. And I'm sure some of you guys are just like, yeah, I'm sure it's going to take a while for him to get that one. Okay, I think we're ready to go ahead and test this one. Run without debugging. Okay. All right, we're going to add a record. Okay. Print the list. Oh, there it is. We're going to add another record. Okay, we're going to print the list. There it is. Okay, now we're going to exit. Okay, now the goal here is now we're going to uncomment this. Now that we're pretty sure we've got a good file to load in. And we're going to load this file in. And once we get this file loaded in, we will print it to make sure it works. And then I'm going to turn it over to you guys for the rest of the functions. Just make sure that you pass it. If it manipulates the list, you pass it the list and return the list. And then use it in this manner when you get back into main. Pass it the list, return it the new list. Save the new list. And this is the proper way without using global variables. So now we want to just see if list email will load, and it looks like I named that one wrong too. So we're going to do a list email load, and when it opens up and runs, I want to just immediately print and see if it saved all my data and created that persistence for me. Okay, let's print the list. And we have it. So you're gonna add you're gonna do the same thing as the add function, but what your add function, you're gonna have a delete function that's gonna return a list after you delete it, after you delete an item in the list. Your change function will also return a new list depending on what you change in the list. So you pass it the list, modify the list, return the list. From main, in the add function, send it the list, receive the new list, save the new list. And that's what you're going to do with the delete function, and the change function is pretty close to what you have with the add. Okay, so remember, change the RAM, overwrite the whole file. Your two functions for delete and change are going to be very close to the add. The only thing that you need to do is when you do the delete and change, after you do the delete and change function, save the list. And here, we're already loading the list right off the bat. Okay, I'm going to do just one more overview so that you guys can see all the code together. Here's the first page. I'm going to use a little bit of some waiting time here. Okay, now I'm going to scroll down to the add function. And the very last thing that's called in is the main code. Well, it's the first thing that runs, but it's the last at the end. And that's true top-down programming. Okay, you guys have a starter for your names and email addresses. Thank you.